Empires didn't fall in war. They fell when trade stopped. Most empires didn't collapse the moment an enemy attacked. They collapsed the moment trade broke. Because when trade dies, money, food, and power die with it. And that sounds almost too simple, because when we hear about collapsed empires, we usually imagine armies, battles, invasions, and dramatic final defeats. But in real history, many empires were already weakening long before the last battle. And the real shock wasn't the attack. It was the breakdown of the system that kept everything alive. Trade. Because trade is not just about luxury goods. Trade is the bloodstream of an empire. It moves food, tools, weapons, taxes, workers, and supplies. And once the bloodstream gets cut, the body doesn't survive for long. Welcome to FrameHistoro, where we explain the hidden mechanics behind history. And today, we're going to uncover why trade collapse can destroy even the strongest empires faster than war ever could. And as we go, you'll notice something important. Empires don't only fall because they lose fights. They fall because they lose flow. The flow of goods, money, and trust. Now picture a powerful empire at its peak. Cities are crowded, markets are full, taxes are rolling in, ships are moving, and food is arriving on schedule. When that system works, everything feels stable, even if politics are messy, even if there are enemies nearby. Because as long as trade continues, the empire can pay soldiers, feed citizens, and reward loyalty. But when trade breaks, panic spreads fast. Because the empire suddenly can't do the basic things it depends on. It can't feed the cities. It can't pay the army. It can't keep prices steady. And it can't keep people calm. And that creates collapse conditions almost overnight. Now, here's the first big reason trade collapse is so deadly. Empires grow dependent on distant supply. The bigger and richer a civilization becomes, the more it specializes. Some regions focus on grain, some on metals, some on textiles, some on shipbuilding, some on weapons. And specialization makes a society stronger when trade is stable, because everyone does what they do best, and exchange fills the gaps. But specialization becomes a weakness when trade breaks, because once the links snap, regions can't cover shortages quickly, and big cities suffer first, because cities don't grow food, they consume it. Rome is one of the clearest examples of this. Rome became a giant city, not because Italy could feed it alone, but because Rome used trade and empire supply to keep it alive. Grain shipments from places like Egypt and North Africa were critical, so the empire wasn't just ruling territory for pride. It was depending on those routes for survival. When those flows were threatened by war, piracy, corruption, or instability, Rome didn't just lose revenue. It faced hunger, price spikes, and unrest. And once citizens can't eat, the empire quickly loses control, because hungry people don't care about speeches. They care about survival. And that leads to the second reason trade collapse breaks empires fast. Money stops flowing. Trade is how governments collect revenue without squeezing everyone daily. Trade creates taxes, port fees, market activity, and general growth. And when trade slows, the state loses income, which means soldiers don't get paid, officials don't get funded, roads don't get repaired, and defenses weaken. So even if the empire still has an army on paper, it becomes weaker in real life, because armies need constant supply, food, weapons, and wages. And without trade, the empire's military becomes a burden instead of a shield. Now, this creates a dangerous loop, because when money gets tight, leaders usually make bad choices. They raise taxes, borrow more, or weaken the currency, and those choices can speed up collapse, because they break trust. And trust is everything during crisis. Once people lose trust in money, they stop trading, they start hoarding, they panic buy, and they pull back from normal life. And that makes the collapse faster. Now, let's talk about a civilization where trade collapse was like pulling the plug. The Bronze Age collapse. Around the late 1200s BC, many powerful kingdoms in the eastern Mediterranean world weakened or fell, including the Mycenaeans, the Hittites, and others. And one big reason was the breakdown of connected trade systems. This world depended on long-distance exchange for bronze, because bronze required copper and tin was not available everywhere. It came through trade routes, and when those routes became unstable due to conflict, migration, disasters, or internal weakness, the entire system began failing. Because without tin, you can't make bronze. Without bronze, you lose tools and weapons. Without tools and weapons, production drops, defense drops, and disorder rises. It was a chain reaction, and once the network collapsed, multiple kingdoms fell within a relatively short time. Not because every city was conquered by one enemy, but because the system connecting them broke down. And once the system breaks, even strong cities become isolated, and isolation kills complex societies. Now, let's move forward to another trade-driven collapse. The Western Roman Empire. The late Roman world didn't only face invasions. It faced economic breakdown, trade slowed, taxes became harder to collect, coin value weakened, and local economies became more isolated. As trade networks weakened, cities shrank, because cities can't stay large without constant exchange. And as cities shrank, the empire became less able to organize, less able to respond quickly, and less able to support its military. So when outside pressure increased, the empire couldn't recover the way it used to. It wasn't just losing battles, it was losing its ability to function. And that is what trade collapse really means. It means the empire loses its operating system. Now, here's the third reason trade collapse can destroy empires faster than war. Political unity falls apart. When trade is strong, different regions of an empire stay connected. They share wealth, resources, and benefits. But when trade breaks, provinces stop feeling tied to the center. They start looking out for themselves. Local leaders take control, and loyalty to the main government fades. Because people follow what keeps them safe and fed, not what looks impressive on a map. And this is why empires often break into smaller pieces after trade collapses. Not because everyone suddenly changed their identity, but because the benefits of staying united disappeared. Now, the fourth reason is one most people don't think about. Trade collapse destroys morale. And morale is real power. When people believe tomorrow will be better, they stay calm, they keep working, they keep cooperating. But when trade breaks, shortages appear, prices rise, and the future feels uncertain. People panic, rumors spread, and social trust breaks. And once social trust breaks, even small problems feel like disasters, because no one believes the system can fix them. And in that emotional chaos, collapse can feel sudden and unstoppable. Now, let's talk about something important. Trade collapse is rarely one single event. It usually starts with pressure. Maybe piracy increases. Maybe borders become unsafe. Maybe war disrupts routes. Maybe a key port falls. Maybe currency collapses. Maybe corruption slows movement. Maybe a drought reduces food production. And once pressure builds, merchants stop risking travel, insurance costs rise, shipments shrink, and supply becomes unpredictable. And then the empire starts reacting, sometimes by using force, sometimes by raising taxes, sometimes by blaming outsiders. And these reactions can make it worse, because trade depends on stability, and desperate empires often create instability. Now, bring this into a simple modern comparison for us audience. Think about what happens when supply chains break today. Prices rise quickly, shelves empty, and people feel anxious. And that is with modern technology, modern trucking, and modern logistics. Now imagine the ancient world, where one storm could sink ships, one bandit group could shut down routes, and one political crisis could stop trade for months. Empires were powerful, but also fragile, because their strength depended on constant movement. And once movement stopped, power stopped. Now here is the hidden lesson behind trade collapse. Empires don't just need territory. They need flow. They need predictable routes, stable markets, and trust that exchange will continue. Because trade is what turns land into wealth, wealth into taxes, taxes into armies, and armies into control. And if that chain breaks at the trade level, everything above it begins collapsing fast. That is why some empires fell almost overnight in the eyes of the people living through it. Because once trade stopped, life changed immediately. Food became scarce, prices became unstable, soldiers became unpaid, cities became restless, and leaders became desperate. And then the collapse that looked sudden was really just the final stage of a system that had lost its lifeline. So here's the key message. Empires didn't always fall when enemies attacked. They fell when trade stopped. Because trade is the system that feeds the city, funds the army, and keeps the empire connected. And once trade dies, money, food, and power die with it. Now take a moment and think about this. What matters more for survival, winning one battle, or keeping the system running every day? History suggests the answer is clear. Systems beat moments, stability beats pride, and flow beats force. If this made you see history differently, subscribe and explore more documentaries on FrameHistoro, because understanding how empires really collapsed helps you understand how the world really works. Thanks for watching.